Give you the thumbs up when we're sharing. There it is. There it is, ladies and gentlemen. We have visuals.
So the biggest thing is, anytime when you're communicating, it becomes there are several questions that happen or that makes the audience not be able to engage or thwarts the audience from, if they do engage, understanding and enjoying. And of course, if the audience doesn't enjoy, we're just all out of luck. I see my screen is over off to the side here. Bear with me. I'm kind of dealing with one camera that didn't suddenly decide not to work. All right. So cutting through the clutter, 10 ways to make your microlearning more effective. Now, here's what we're going to do. We're going to talk about some common mistakes. We're going to talk about sort of the root of where those mistakes usually come from. And then we'll talk about 13 things that you can do to alleviate those mistakes. All right, so the problem. Poorly educated materials leads to learning and low learning and even lower engagement. And really, it's much more, it's worse than that, because what ultimately happens is when we do things that are not productive, we're not helping people. And when we're not helping people, it ends up that we get burned out. And we get burned out, we don't want to do it anymore. Or it just means that if we do it with less effort. Rinse and repeat. So this is not just a little problem. This is actually one of the biggest problems that we all face. Symptoms: too much information, unclear objectives. And the reason that we have unclear objectives, and I've had this happen myself, is that I have unclear objectives because I either don't know what I want, or the person that I report to doesn't know what they want. But it doesn't matter which one it is. If we're the one executing, we're going to see failure if we are not very, very clear, crystal clear on what we're wanting to achieve and to which the audience we want to achieve it with. Both of those things are not just are the most important things that we can do. Everything else then is, falls from that tree. Indirect or unclear statements, no interactive elements. By the way, this is a perfect time if you want to jump into 7 taps and start making up some and testing it out. This would be a great time to do it. And if we have time at the end, if there's some people that want to show what their work and what they're working on and how they're doing it, that'd be awesome. So there's a confusing tone and no reinforcement. And it's interesting because when I first started with 7 taps, I thought, well, these are so short, I don't need to have reinforcement because they're just short. They're like snackable. Why? But with today's ability to concentrate on things, or people definitely not concentrating maybe the first time through, that cycle of reinforcement becomes all the more important. Long, complex sentences. And then at the end, and this always kills me when I see it, a person works to the end. They do a great job, and they give it in concise. They know who the audience are talking to. They talk directly to that audience in a way that engages them, a way that's exciting. And then what happens? Well, at the end, they're like, I'm done. And what happens is it's like the person going in for sales, and they didn't bother to ask for the close. Nothing happens unless what we put out leads to a change of action. Otherwise, we're just wasting our time. So what is the root cause of these problems? So I have 3 of them. Actually, there's a little bit of a 4th. So deep down, when I always look at what are the things that cause me to be inarticulate, to be less than effective in my communication, usually boils down to these 3. Uncertainty. I either don't know who I'm talking to. I don't know what to say to them. And that usually leads to fear. If I'm afraid of what they're going to say to me, then I suddenly become uncertain of what I want to say. If I don't know for sure what I need to teach, then what will ultimately happen is that will lead to fear. And then there's one that's sort of out of bounds, and that is the pride. And I've seen this happen where I feel like, you know what? I've done this so many times. They should know what the answer is to this. And something rises up in me and says, you know what? I don't need to kowtow to their lack of understanding. They're going to get there or not. And as soon as I do that, I know what happens is I've lost my audience. And if I lost my audience, I've lost my effectiveness. So let's go to the 13 keys to better micro learning. What can be done? Biggest one, define your audience. In fact, I would say that the next one is also big, but defining your audience is really the biggest, because if the goal is to change an audience, to make an impact on an audience, if we are not able to target them, speak to them, communicate with them, bond with them in a way that's powerful and effective, it doesn't matter what our goals are. That's moot. So it's understand who your learners are, what they want, how they prefer to learn, and this will help tailor your content and your goals, preferences, and prior knowledge. Define objectives. I think this is the most commonly I've seen that these are the two that get mixed up. One goes before the other, the cart before the horse in this case. So I say, you know what, we got to have people learning this stuff. This is really important. But when we do that, what ultimately happens is that we can define those objectives all we want, but if we're not very clear, it simply won't be something that is effective in reaching our audience. Brevity is the key. Keep sentences short and to the point. Long, complex sentences are difficult to follow. And I find that long, complex sentences are caused by two things: hubris or unclarity of thought. When I have a very clear thought, a person doesn't need to say, if they really want to, they don't need to say something long. It's just, will you marry me? But in this case, it would be, let me say how many words because I'm afraid of being rejected. So I'll just draw it out. Use simple language. Write in accessible language. Avoid jargon. What is the best way to avoid jargon? There are several books out there, but we're going to end with one simple tool that handles all 13 of these and does it with not perfection, but pretty near close. Clear and direct. Use active voice instead of passive voice. How often do we slip into that way of talking, communicating that really is just less effective? Concrete examples. When we can talk in terms of real things that have happened that our audience can identify with, suddenly those visuals will stick and be much more effective at behavior change or learning than some sort of just general idea. And the importance in storytelling. As you all know, I'm sure that storytelling is the most important thing. When we are telling stories, people are listening. There's a reason why all of the great communicators in the world have always used story as their primary means of conveying information. Repetition for reinforcement, and this is more true for microlearning even than everything, because in the swipe world, we're easily given to sort of paying attention the first time, kind of paying attention the second time, but it takes that third, fourth repetition to bring it back home. Ask questions. Going back to the beginning, the reason people don't ask questions most often is they either don't know the audience well enough to ask the questions, or they're fearful of looking stupid. And either one is an insufficient reason to not ask questions, because it is only the questions that cause the audience to probe their mind to find out where the gaps are, so that we can step in and fill those gaps. Because sometimes we think the gaps are, a crack in the sidewalk. In reality, it's the Grand Canyon. So we're doing nothing if we do not answer questions. Things that always make communication more interesting, particularly microlearning, is the using analogies and metaphors, of course, action verbs, and personal pronouns. In other words, speaking to your audience as if you really know them and they're not just some sort of foreign body that you're just speaking to in some nebulous fashion. Is there an easier way? There is. And it is ChatGPT-4. So every single one of these questions that we just went through, by the way, 4 is the one you pay for. 3 is nice, but it's like a toy. It's like a 7th grader's toy. 4 is like a college grad. I wouldn't be able to, I would say my productivity level has gone up 200% since getting ChatGPT-4. It's just amazing what it can do. But it is also like learning to play chess or to play a complex game. It requires strategy and thinking. And it's not just like using Google. It's far more advanced. Final thought. In a world of ADHD brains, microlearning is the antidote. That's it.
All right. Well, Gregg, thank you so much. And out of curiosity, I'm always curious, because as AI continues to integrate its way into things, you mentioned it's been a big productivity helper for you. What are some, and this isn't the AI conversation, you want to listen to that, subscribe to my YouTube channel. I talk about that way too much over there. But out of curiosity, what are some of the practical things that you're doing to help with that? Because I agree that it can be a huge productivity helper. It's interesting hearing how different folks are using it.
Yeah, I would say, well, last week I had some writing by someone that was, it was a good piece, but I needed to take it and make it sound more like the person that originally authored it. So I took into ChatGPT that bit of copied and pasted it, and then I put their original writing, and I said, match that writing style to this copy. And it changed it, sounded just like that person.
Okay, got it. Well, and I think the use cases for it in terms of that, and even some of the things, like I think back to the point you made about microlearning, it can be an extremely helpful tool for helping people be more brief. Going back to your point about brevity, I think sometimes it's, we were trained in academics to put a bunch of words into things where it was like, make it 10 pages. And you're like, well, I could say this in a page and a half, but challenge accepted. I'm going to make it 12 for the A+. And we've all grown up in that. And you're like, okay, so now the same thing comes to e-learning in the presentations where you go, all right, what is it you need people to do? Well, here's the 187 slide PowerPoint deck that goes through it. And being able to really consolidate that and help bring it down. I know even for myself, I've used it for things like that. So, well, let's get a round of emojis for Gregg. By the way, the slides were beautiful.